But I want to ask you about the game that you say we play in Washington, because the fact is that when President Obama took executive actions, you were outraged. And as you would expect, I've got a couple of examples of Rush Limbaugh over the years. Let's put them on the screen. In June of 2012, when President Obama deferred action against the Dreamers, you said this: 40 years ago, Richard Nixon was hounded out of office, supposedly for his illegal actions. And I'm telling you that whatever Nixon did pales in comparison to just this move by Obama today. In November of 2014, on reports that Mr. Obama was going to protect millions of parents of Dreamers, you said this: we can't just stand idly by and try to find some political opportunity while the president basically shreds the Constitution and flushes it down the toilet. So here's my question, Rush. I understand that you like what President Trump is doing and you didn't like what President Obama was doing. But that's the concern here, is that to the degree that you give the president more and more powers, yes, you're going to get some things, executive powers from one president you like, but you're going to get things, executive powers from another president that you don't like.
You may look at it that way. I don't. I look at it at right and wrong. And what Obama was doing was furthering this existing problem. He was politicizing this, using whatever executive powers he wanted to use. Yes, I objected to that, but primarily because of what he was doing with these executive powers. He was taking action that I deemed to be harmful to the country. I look at what Trump is doing as something he has to do because he's not getting any cooperation whatsoever, both parties, Chris.
And that's why Rush Limbaugh and like-minded Republicans have no credibility. Because when Obama was in office, Republicans cried out about protecting the Constitution. We must live and die by the Constitution. I have a poster of James Madison, the father of the Constitution, on the ceiling above my bed, so it's the last thing I see when I go to sleep and the first thing I see when I wake up in the morning. And now, when Trump is setting fire to the thing, Republicans are suggesting, well, let's slow down. The Constitution is merely a framework. What's important is the intent, as long as that intent is something that I also agree with. Then there's, wiggle room. The truth is, these Republicans who pose as constitutionalists will only hide behind the Constitution so long as they can exploit it to advance their agenda. Just as congressional Republicans have, for the last 2 years, contracted every ounce of power they hold to the executive branch, refusing to do any oversight into the president. The initial 35-day government shutdown's continuing resolution had passed the Senate with unanimous consent before Trump threw a tantrum. Congress could have easily overridden Trump's veto, but they chose instead to subvert the system of checks and balances because that's just how precious the Constitution is to them. And now, it's wholly possible that the next Democratic president will declare a national emergency for actual emergencies, like gun violence, which took the lives of 40,000 Americans last year, or climate change, which is costing this country billions of dollars, destroying our infrastructure, and putting future generations in peril, or voter suppression, which precluded hundreds of thousands of Americans from exercising their most fundamental right as citizens. In fact, by virtue of exploiting the most tenuous situation imaginable, the quote-unquote immigration crisis on the southern border, which is no more of a crisis than shark attacks, really anything can be declared a national emergency now. And you will undoubtedly hear Rush Limbaugh hysterically decrying how liberals are once again tearing our Constitution into shreds, but his words will be utterly useless. Because after all, while some might look at it as a constitutional issue,
I look at it at right and wrong.